right, you should be live.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone out there in Facebook land. My name is Seth Leblond, and I am the Comprehensive Program Coordinator at Saavi Services for the Blind in Phoenix. I am here today to talk to you about how to get started with your vocational rehabilitation program. Easy for me to say. We get a lot of calls and questions about this process. A lot of times, blind folks or family of blind folks or friends of blind folks will call us up and they'll say, hey, I heard about your training program and I would really like services. When can I start? And there is a process to this, which we tell everyone about who calls us directly. I want to take the opportunity now to sort of preemptively tell people about what this process is like and talk to you a little bit about what you need to do in order to get prepared. Because unfortunately, it's not just a matter of setting up an appointment and getting a start date with a training center. So I'm going to start out by reading a little bit of information from the actual VR web page, or a VR web page. There are lots of pages associated with Voc Rehab. And this is all available on the page. Let's see, I'm not going to read the whole address of the page, but it is at https://des.az.gov, and then there are some slashes, and this content is buried a little bit in this page, but we're going to post a link up here very soon for where this information is located, and you will be able to jump directly to it too. It's a really nice resource. So I'm going to read a little bit from this page. I'm going to, of course, interject some of my own commentary to give you a little bit more information from our perspective. I'll give you a little bit more information at the end. And of course, if you have any questions, please feel free to write them. And my friend Scott, who is helping me out with this Facebook Live deal, will let me know, and we will answer your questions as best we can. So let's get started. This heading is, what is the Vocational Rehabilitation, or VR, program? The Vocational Rehabilitation Program provides a variety of services to persons with disabilities, with the ultimate goal to prepare for, enter into, or retain employment. So I interject here to say that this is a work program, and your rehab counselors will emphasize that prior to and during the course of your training. The ultimate goal is to help you get to work, but you obviously need to have some confidence, some independent living skills. A lot of other things go along with that. So you want to make sure that you're clear about the ultimate goal. But here at Saavi, we are a holistic training agency. And so training will involve assistive technology, travel, braille, independent living skills like cooking, cleaning, organization, doing banking and budgeting, or things like that. We also incorporate some philosophy classes into our programming. It's a class called Positive Philosophy of Blindness that we have, which talks about how to sort of come to terms with blindness, how to live in the world as a confident blind person, how to deal with public that doesn't necessarily understand blindness. We have a lot of really cool discussions in there. These are all relatable to employment because in all these classes, we're using problem-solving skills. We're learning how to think outside the box. We are learning how to apply skills that we have learned to situations that we have never encountered. And so while the ultimate goal is employment, you're going to get a lot more out of the program that is related to employment, but also related to other parts of your life. So I want to be very clear about that. The next part is, am I eligible for the VR program? You may be eligible for VR services if you meet all of the following requirements. A, you have a physical or mental impairment. B, your physical or mental impairment constitutes or results in a substantial impediment to employment. C, you require VR services in order to prepare for, secure, retain, or regain employment. And D, you can benefit from the provision of VR services in terms of achieving an employment outcome. So this is sort of, how do I know that I need rehab services, right? If you have an impairment, in this case, we're talking about blindness, that impacts your ability to do work. And you can derive benefit from VR services. Those services will actually help you to achieve your goal of getting to work. Then you may qualify, I guess they say that, for voc rehab services. For our intents and purposes, I'd like to talk about the functional definition of blindness that we use. There's, of course, a legal definition of blindness that everybody knows. It deals with your visual acuity. And since it's the legal definition, it's the one that agencies will typically use to determine whether or not you qualify for certain services. The definition that we use as an agency, though, is essentially if you require assistive technology or adaptive strategies to perform everyday tasks that most sighted people can perform without adaptive or assistive tools, then functionally you are blind. And so as you're trying to figure out whether these services are appropriate for you, you want to ask yourself, what am I having trouble with? If you can't use your computer because you can't see it, or you can't use it very long because you can't see it very well and it gives you eye strain. You have difficulty traveling independently, particularly if lighting conditions are not appropriate. If you have trouble doing almost anything sort of around the house because of your vision or lack thereof in this case, then, functionally you need some help. And that's what this training center is here for. Obviously, if you meet the legal definition of blindness, it's a lot easier to get services. And when you start signing up for vocational rehabilitation services, it's helpful to sort of have an appointment with your doctor and have medical documentation about your disability before you get the process started. This goes on to say, and I'm going to read this because I don't want anybody to panic about this. This goes on to say, due to limited state funding, individuals determined eligible for the vocational rehabilitation program may be placed on a wait list for services. The wait list is designed to ensure that individuals who are most in need of vocational rehabilitation services are able to receive VR services in a timely manner. So I don't want anybody to read that and be worried. Blind folks are in the highest priority group. So there's typically not a wait list for services if the reason that you are applying for these services is that you're blind. So I wouldn't want anybody to go to this link and say, oh no, I might not get services. If you're legally blind and you sort of meet all their requirements, in addition to that, you will be accepted for services and there shouldn't be a wait list. How do I apply for the VR program? An application for VR services starts with a referral. Select one of the following methods for completing a referral. So you can call or visit the Vocational Rehabilitation office nearest you. One of the reasons why I linked this page is because there is a link right here that shows you where all the VR offices are and gives you their phone number and their address. So if you want to know where you need to call to start this process, the link to show you how to do that is right here. It says, and inquire about VR services or set up an appointment. VR staff will collect personal information from you and complete an RSA referral form on your behalf. Now, you can also complete these forms and email them. It tells you how to do that on this page. I highly, highly recommend that you do not do that. I recommend strongly that you call them or visit them in person. Make sure you set up an appointment. This way, you're not sending an application to this nameless, faceless email address. You are actually talking to a person and you know that your application has been worked on. If you send an email and you don't receive a response right away, you don't know whether the email got lost, it got into someone's junk folder. Did they receive it? Did they not receive it? Then you have to call them up and follow up anyway. Hey, did you get my application? It is my strong recommendation to make sure that initially, at least, you conduct your business with Voc Rehab with someone live. It doesn't have to be in, physical proximity, but over the phone, you definitely want to make sure that you do that. That is sort of where the information on this page that I want to read ends. There's a lot more available on this page, but I want to skip now ahead to what the process looks like after you have that VR appointment and sort of during appointments with Voc Rehab once you get this process started.
Seth, you have a question, just to let you know.
All right, I'm told that there is a question and I'm going to go ahead and pause to answer that now.
Maybe you might bring it up in another part of it, but it's what can you do in the meantime if you're waiting on a doctor's documents, etc.?
The question is, what can you do in the meantime if you're waiting on a doctor's documents, etc.? Well, you can still set up your appointment. Ultimately, in order to complete the process, you're going to have that documentation. So I wouldn't wait very long on that documentation. If you have a history with an ophthalmologist, which you probably do if you're losing your vision, you shouldn't even need an appointment to go get verification of blindness. You should literally just be able to call your doctor's office and have them mail to you, email to you, fax to you, just generally send you documentation that confirms that you are blind if you have an existing relationship with your doctor. If you don't have an existing relationship, again, probably the longest part of the waiting process should be waiting for the appointment. It does not take the doctor very long to fill out the information that they need to fill out to certify you as legally blind. So you can still set up the appointment, But my biggest thought here, I think my most important thought, is that you really should not have to be waiting long for a determination of blindness. So if you have asked for one and your doctor is dragging their feet, I would literally call them up every day and say, I'm still waiting for this. I need it in order to get my services. You need it for a lot of other things too. You need it for if you're going to qualify for SSI or SSDI. You need it in order to qualify to use Newsline for the blind. You need it in order to qualify for National Library Service. There are so many things that you need this certification of blindness for, that they should not be dragging their feet on it. And honestly, you shouldn't have to wait more than a couple of days for it. So there shouldn't be a lot of time when you're sort of sitting around thinking, gosh, I wish I could do something. You should get that determination pretty quickly. Hopefully that answers the question. Do you have any more questions right now while I am sort of on pause?
No, you're good. Thank you for answering that question. That was very good.
All right, we're going to go ahead and continue. So you have this appointment, you have your documentation. They say, okay, you're blind. We're going to get you started. They're going to ask you some sort of personal questions. They're going to ask you how old you are, and they're going to ask you if you have any forms of income, and if so, what those are. There is an income eligibility requirement as well for some services. There is, for example, one of the services that Voc Rehab can pay for is transportation. Well, if you're in a household with a household income of $250,000 a year, they're not going to pay for your transportation to and from a training center. So there are some services that have an income requirement as well. They'll ask you maybe some questions about your health insurance just to make sure that you have that in place. The most important thing they're going to ask you is probably about your work history, if you have any. And they're going to ask you about your plan to work. This is one of the most difficult parts, I think, because before you actually receive blindness skills training, you usually don't have a great idea about what blind people are capable of doing. You probably won't make a great truck driver. Hate to break that to you. That's one that we have not figured out yet. It may be possible that with smart trucks coming up, that you could be an operator, but that's some point in the future. You're not going to be an Uber driver as your VR goal. But I think most people don't realize right off the bat that most other vocational fields are open. We have successfully helped people to retain jobs in the construction industry. We've helped people get jobs as teachers. We've helped people find work as social workers, life coaches, customer service. Now, sometimes people will say, well, I want to do customer service, and that's not really what they want to do because they don't know that blind people can do other things. They're going to start the process of filling out what's called an IPE for you, which is an individualized plan for employment. In your IPE, you have to have a job goal. The good news is you can change it. So if you're not sure what you want to do, but you're interested in customer service, that's fine. You can write that down. And once you are in the training program, you could do some career exploration. And during that career exploration process, you can hammer out what you really want to do. But you can't start your training program unless you have already specified a job goal. So that's one thing that they will do for you. Once you specify that job goal, the person who's doing what they call the intake, this is what we're talking about now, the intake. Once you specify your job goal, then the person doing that intake is going to sort of come up with a list of things that you'll need in order to be able to achieve that goal. Again, this is all ultimately about employment, even though you get other stuff as a benefit of the training. So, for example, if you want to be an English teacher, then they're going to need to sort of determine how much education you already have, how much education you're going to need in order to become an English teacher. They will need to determine, okay, so you need assistive technology, you need to be able to live independently, you're going to need independent living skills, you're going to need to be able to read independently, so we're going to get you some Braille training, and we're going to need to be able to travel independently, so we're going to need to get you O&M, or orientation and mobility training. So they're going to write those services up in your plan as things that you need. And they're also going to write up, you're going to need some support with education going forward, because obviously, in the case of, say, an English teacher, you're going maybe to need some educational support in order to finish your degree or whatever it is that you need. So they'll try to write up all the services that they can think of that you would need in order to achieve this job goal. Once that is done, you will then participate in an introductory, kind of what they're doing now is a little bit different, but you'll get an introduction to the training centers and options that are available to you. Generally, that means you get to tour the area training centers here. You get to learn about all the programs. Right now, those tours are happening virtually because of COVID-19, but they are happening, which is a good thing. You get to learn all about the programming, and then it is time for you to choose the training center that you want to go to. The training centers in this area all have their own distinct flavors. Saavi is a structured discovery training center where we teach foundational concepts, and we teach them non-visually. We feel like if you have some vision, you generally already know how to use it. We don't need to waste your time by sort of teaching you visual skills. What you need is to learn how to do things when viewing conditions are not optimal, right? When your lighting isn't perfect, your contrast isn't perfect, when you need to get something done and you can't see to do it, that's what you don't know how to do. And so that's where our training focuses on the non-visual skills. And the structured discovery piece of that is that we don't teach by rote. We don't teach you, this is step 1, this is step 2, this is step 3, and now you can perform this one task. What we do is we teach you sort of the foundational skills, and then we encourage problem solving to deal with unfamiliar situations. For example, if we teach you how to cross 44th Street at Thomas, you should be able to apply what you learned about that to crossing 40th Street at Thomas. Similar circumstance, you got your 4-way intersection. We want you to feel comfortable dealing with similar but unfamiliar situations. Our ultimate goal as a training center is for you not to need us anymore. We want you to become self-sufficient. It's not possible to teach literally everything you are ever going to need to know. especially with something like technology or travel, things like that. Situations change. Technology is always changing, and you don't want to have to come back to another training program when they release a new version of Microsoft Office, for example. We want you to be able to take what you know about using the computer and apply that to learning how to use the new Microsoft Office all by yourself. So our goal is to make you not just independent in this moment, but self-sufficient going forward and self-reliant.
So we have a question here.
Great. We have a question. And Scott, just so I'm clear, can the folks on Facebook Live hear you as well?
Yes, they should be
Okay,
here.
so I
You
don't
don't have
mute.
to redo it again. Yeah.
Okay, I just did that from my former experience because
Yeah,
I know
no,
they
you're
couldn't
great.
hear you. So I will stop doing that. You go
Oh,
ahead
no
and read the
worries.
question.
What level of flexibility does an individualized plan of employment have after signed, for example, in the case of unforeseen circumstances?
That's an excellent question. The really the thing is that you need to determine that job goal, and that's the thing that you really want to know about flexibility about. Once you've established a job goal, it's pretty clear kind of what you need in order to achieve that goal. During the career exploration process, you will have the opportunity to change that goal. Technically speaking, you can change it as many times as you want. And once that goal changes, if any of the services that you need change, then that would have to be written into your plan as well. Practically speaking, it is a real pain, not to mention a potential delay in your service if you are constantly changing your goal. Because every time that goal changes, the IPE has to be sort of rewritten, or parts of it do, and then it all needs to be signed off again by your rehab counselor and you, and sometimes by supervisors at vocational rehabilitation. So you want to limit the number of times that you have to change your goal. If by unforeseen circumstances, what you mean is, I really want to be an English teacher, but it turns out that my family income just went away and I need a job like tomorrow. You can go ahead and get a job doing whatever it is that you need to do, and you can ultimately rewrite your plan so that that job is reflected in the plan. Or if you can get a part-time job that rehab doesn't necessarily directly support and still work towards your ultimate goal. So we've had it come up actually where we've had students that are like, oh gosh, I actually need to be working right now. And they've gotten, say, like a part-time job, and we've done what we can to work our scheduling, in combination with that. Obviously, if you're not available for training, then we have a problem in terms of providing services, right? So there's a lot of flexibility, not only in the IPE itself, as long as you're not changing your goal every week, you definitely don't want to be doing that. You want to find your job goal and try to settle on it. But also, we can be flexible in your training if you need to be employed while you're in training in a job that rehab is not directly supporting. That's an option as well, as long as you're still available to participate in services. So there are a lot of things that you can do, related to unforeseen circumstances and trying to make sure that you can ultimately achieve your goal. Oh.
So you have another question also too that came through.
All right.
It's kind of a two-part question by the same person. Are there any resources that you can access in the meantime while you're going through the VR process? And the second part, why is it important to get comprehensive training rather than individual training or individual service?
So there are other resources that you can access in the meantime while you're waiting for Voc Rehab services. In that particular case, the services that are available would sort of depend on what your availability is, what our availability is, etc. You would definitely we would want to help you out with that on a sort of case by case basis. You would want to contact the training center directly to see what might be available. And depending on your situation, depending on your age and what your actual goals are, there might be groups at various training centers that would sort of fill a little bit of the gap. It wouldn't be something like comprehensive training, which is incredibly important. I'm glad that someone asked that question. So let me talk a little bit more about the rest of this process and sort of then get to that question because it sort of flows together kind of nicely. Once you have completed sort of your intake and your IPE and stuff like that, and you have this introduction to different training centers, then what you do is you tell your counselor which one of these training centers you want to go to. And then your counselor will create a referral to attend one of the training centers. When I receive a referral, I usually call people the next day after I receive it. I have, I think, 7 business days to call someone, and generally I don't wait that long because our goal is to help people out as quickly as possible. So once that referral and authorization is received that we need to proceed, we contact the client and set up what's called a pre-assessment staffing. And this is a meeting for me or our site manager, Shannon Mundati, to get together with the student and the rehab counselor and possibly some instructors to sort of get on the same page about what it is that you feel like you are needing in and from the program, like what your job goal is, what your work history is. We want to have a conversation. It takes a couple of hours to have this conversation, and we sort of talk about what client expectations are, what our expectations are, what the counselor's expectations are, and how we're going to move forward with this process. Once that pre-assessment has occurred, then what we do is a comprehensive skills assessment. And this is where I'm going to talk about comprehensive versus sort of ad hoc skills. First of all, there are a lot of skills that are incredibly important for people to be able to have to be employable. We talk about the core classes. You need your travel, you need your tech, you need to be able to live independently, and you do need to be able to read. It helps with a lot of things. And we talk about what we haven't thought about historically as core classes that really are core classes, like the group discussion classes that I was talking about a little bit earlier. In our experience, first of all, most people who come to us saying, I'm just about ready to go back to work. I just need a little bit of help with my technology. Most people who tell us that sort of we're identifying other things that they need help with when they arrive. Like if they can't find the tech lab to get to the technology class, that's sort of a red flag for us, right? Like you probably need some O&M skills as well. But this is why we do the assessment, okay? So if during the course of assessments, it is determined that, you know, you're a rock star at everything, and what you really need is some AT skills and tech, but you have demonstrated that you have already all these amazing skills in all these other areas, then we could work with you to not provide comprehensive services. But there are some things that you just have to be able to prove that you can do in order to be considered employable from the VR perspective. So it's not a question of whether you really want to get certain skills. It's a question of whether you have them. I hope that makes sense. You have to be able to travel independently, even if you don't think of it as being important for yourself. It is going to be important for you with regard to being able to find a job and secure employment, and not to sort of hem yourself into one specific job. So we can kind of make that determination during the assessment process. Oh, this person's already like a gourmet chef. Well, they don't need to work on cooking skills. They've demonstrated that they can put a pair of learning shades on and do a meal for everybody at the center. So they demonstrate that they don't need to learn cooking. They demonstrate in their assessment that they can sew. You don't need to do sewing. You demonstrate, you know, so it's a question of what skills you can actually demonstrate. If you can demonstrate whichever skills you can already demonstrate, you don't have to continue to receive training in those skills. But it is a question of making sure that you can demonstrate all the skills that are required for you to be deemed employable. Hopefully that makes sense. Are there any other questions right now?
Nope, you're doing great.
All right, so we've completed our assessment. And once we complete the assessment, our goal is to try to get people into training officially as quickly as possible. The transition from assessment to training is generally seamless. It is necessary to teach you during your assessments. One of the things that we have to assess is how well you learn, how well you retain information. What kind of learner are you? A visual learner, a kinesthetic learner, an auditory learner? We have to assess those things, and there's no other way to do that other than by us teaching you things. So by the time your assessment is over, you're basically just in classes and learning. So it's just about seamless, but we do prepare reports for your rehab counselor about you and the progress that you've made and what we learned about you in assessments. And then we all get together with you in an assessment staffing and talk about that and talk about what we need to do going forward in your program. The length of your program is really dependent on a number of factors. It's going to depend, first of all, on how hard you work. That's number one, and also on how often you work. If you're using your skills outside of class and really integrating them into your life, it makes it a lot quicker and a lot easier to learn them. If you kind of are the kind of person who goes to the classroom and learns in there, and then you go home and you forget about it, and you're not dealing with it, it will take you a little longer to get through the program. If you're only available for classes 2 or 3 days a week, it will take you quite a while to get through the program. So being available for classes as many hours a week as possible is really important. Especially right now during COVID-19, when we are providing virtual classes, by the way, which is good. Some people have legitimate reasons like childcare issues and other reasons why they are not available to come to class from 8 to 4, Monday through Friday. It's totally understandable. Hopefully we kind of get through this situation as quickly as possible and kind of go to whatever the new normal is going to be. But generally speaking, when our center is completely open, classes are from 8 to 4, at least in Phoenix they are. I think they have a slightly different schedule down in Yuma, Scott. But it's based on, what the available instructors and students is down a bit. I think it may be a half an hour. I feel like it started at 7:30 down in Yuma.
Yeah, we start at 7:30 and it goes all the way to 4.
Yeah, so it's a little bit different. But either way, the idea is if you could come to class for full days all week long, you'll get through your training a lot faster. People often ask, though, how long does it take to get through training? It should take 9 to 12 months. It can take a little bit less than that if you're super hyper focused. We've had some students get through in 6 months. They have been super driven, super hyper focused, never missed a day, practiced their skills every day after class and all weekend. And we never stopped hearing from them for using what we were teaching them in class. So, you kind of control the rate at which you get your training. Once you receive that training, the comprehensive training is complete. And we have other programs, by the way. I'm talking about the comprehensive program today. But once that program is complete, then you move to sort of the next step. And the next step can vary depending on what your job goal is. Maybe your next step is that you need support with going to college. We can support that. And then you'd be in our educational support services program. If you are going right from comprehensive to trying to find a job, then you would be in employment services. We would be helping you customize your resume and trying to give you some job leads and helping to guide you through the process of looking for work. And we could tackle it from that angle. So we basically, we're going to serve you from sort of the beginning of this process all the way through to you have a job and you've been able to keep that job for a few months. We are there to help with that whole process. But the whole thing starts with contacting your Voc Rehab office. It does not start with contacting us. It can start with contacting us. But what I would tell you when you contact us is exactly what I have just said about getting the whole process started and trying to see that through. Does anyone have any other questions right now?
No questions.
All right. Well, on that happy note, I hope that this has been helpful for those of you who have had questions about how to get started with the Voc Rehab process. I hope that we've cleared up some confusion. As I said, we're going to have a link to this page, which is a great resource to learn a little bit about rehab. And there's a link on the page as well to help get you in touch with your local Voc Rehab office if you are in need of services and you are looking for work. A lot of times people and the families of people that we speak with don't believe that they can work. They think that blindness is a reason why they cannot work. Blindness is a reason why you can't work if you don't receive blindness training. You typically would find it very difficult to get back to work if you lost your eyesight and then you didn't receive any training and didn't know what to do. But once you have received training in blindness skills and you have received assistive technology equipment, which Voc Rehab also provides, blindness is never a reason why you cannot work. So if you're watching this right now and you have thought for all this time that blindness would stop you from working, I urge you to get that thought right out of your head and contact your vocational rehabilitation office as soon as you can pick up a phone. Blindness does not prevent you from working, ever. So take heart, go out there and be productive and fulfill your dreams.